Let's be real. Most taverns in D&D campaigns are just beige, you know? Like this kind of beige. They're just beige. Like your players, they walk in, they buy some ale, there's a room upstairs, and they get a quest from a weird hooded guy in the corner, and then they never talk about the tavern again unless they're back in the city. They're just not invested in it, and it's not memorable. It's just another place on the map between the goblins and the boss fights. But taverns can be so much more than that. They can be gossip factories, they can be rumor hubs, emotional touchstones for your players to connect with. And they can also serve as a home base. In one of my games, a tavern was a home base for the longest time. And yet, most of these taverns seem to always boil down to you enter the place and it's called the Rusty Spoon or whatever, and there's this guy behind the bar and he sells drinks. And that's it. And honestly, in my opinion, that to me is just a vending machine that has a roof and conveniently gives you a quest when you need it. So today, we're going to fix that because we're better than that. So here are 9 things that I think you can add to your taverns that turns your generic fantasy tavern into an actual point of interest for your town or city. And this can apply to D&D, your fantasy world building. It can probably apply to sci-fi taverns if you really wanted to go there. So the first thing you need is a good name. I think that a good name is really probably the most important thing when it comes from an aesthetic point of view, because there's not really much your players can latch onto if you're doing this for a D&D setting, or even if you're doing this for a book. No matter how much you try to show things to them, to your readers or your players or what have you, the only thing that's going to stand out to them is the words, or the words on the page, or the words that you say. So the name is really the only thing that they can attach to without having to imagine it on their own. So things like, when I was in Savannah, Georgia, there was this bar called The Other Bar, and it was right across the street from a bar. So to kind of put that into perspective, I think it's just a really interesting thing to do with the name, is to kind of make a statement, right? We're not a bar, we're The Other Bar. There was another one that I saw that was called Under the Stairs, which I thought was really interesting. And you can come up with your own names, like calling a tavern The Second Wife or whatever. And that's a good name, is just one of those things that's really going to elevate the tavern, since it's one of the first things that your players or your readers are going to see. Now, the second thing that you need is you need an interesting thing, or a signature quirk, right? So, for example, in Faerun, right, I'm pretty sure it's Faerun. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. You can angrily yell at me if I'm wrong, but the Elf Song Tavern from Baldur's Gate, no, that's definitely Faerun, so don't come at me. I know I'm right. 99.9%. The Elf Song Tavern has a ghost, right? And I don't mean to spoil that for anybody that didn't know that. And I'm only throwing a little bit of shade at Baldur's Gate 3 for not putting a ghost in the Elf Song Tavern, unless I missed it. If I missed something, please call me out for that. But what makes the Elf Song Tavern memorable is the idea that there's this ghost that comes back almost every night to sing a song, and the song is about the history of the tavern, right? If you can give your tavern an interesting thing that makes it stand out, it doesn't have to be a ghost. It can be something as simple as like a tree growing in the middle of it where the bar wraps around the trunk, or that it's built on a cliff that overlooks the ocean. Whatever the thing is, it just needs to be something that your players or readers can go back to, that they can latch onto, that they can sort of use it as a point of reference for your tavern. Now, the third thing that your tavern needs is an interesting backstory, right? The real thing that you want to do here, what we're really trying to get at here, is that in order to make it more interesting, in order to make it feel like it's real, like it belongs in your world, you really need to treat it like a character. And that goes for everything from, like, obviously NPCs, but like even your cities and towns should have their own backstories. They should have their own motivations and goals, right? Because towns are these sort of amorphous, breathing things that change with the political environment and the things that happen in the world, right? So taverns should be the same thing, where they need a backstory, they need some history, they need something, right? Even if it's just a fire that broke out in the kitchen because the tavern's only 10 years old, but there was the fire 5 years ago that, you know, they had to rebuild the kitchen, so it's newer than the rest of the bar. Whatever it is, it needs to have something that you can kind of go back to, and you can do this in ways that isn't just like a bartender regurgitating information behind the bar, right? It can be something like a couple of monsters on the wall, plaques, right, with their heads resting on the wall there, because that insinuates that somebody went out and brought those things back. And so you get a little bit of a history there. You start asking questions, and it makes it just feel a little more interesting and a little more lived in, I guess. So get a backstory. Now, the fourth thing, you want to have a memorable staff, right? So I think that having a unique staff, and not all taverns are going to have a unique staff, right? Sometimes it's just the bland, you know, Mr. Joe behind the bar or whatever. But every once in a while, you're going to have something that makes somebody stand out, you know, whether it's a peg leg and it's a pirate that's working that's tending the bar, or it's an alien or whatever, right? Just find something that you can use to sort of draw out the things that make the staff unique. So it could be, in the case of Critical Role, right? You have Pretty, I believe it was Pretty, who is the bartender in Campaign 3. Big Ogre. Cookie, it was Cookie. Thank you, disembodied voice. So, you know, a large ogre or a half giant, I can't remember what he was. It's been a long time since I saw that, but it's one of those things that makes the character stand out. And, you know, lo and behold, the Critical Role players did latch onto that character because it happened to be the one ogre, right? It's the thing that stood out amongst everything else in this imaginary place in their head. So giving the staff something unique, making them stand out in one way or another is a great way to do that. And I think one great character that we can sort of see where this worked really well is Poe from Altered Carbon. I mean, it's pretty cool to have an entire hotel AI be able to just pull guns out of anywhere, right? Now, number 5 is a real menu, and I think this one kind of goes without saying because a lot of times DMs will just sort of revert. That's the word I was looking for. It will revert to the menu that you see in the player's handbook. I think it's the player's handbook. It might be the DMG, but either way, there is a menu that you can see sort of that lays out the basic prices of your average goods that you might find in various places, right? So since that's there, why do you need to create anything? Well, I think having a real menu, one that is catered to each place, is going to make it feel more real because ultimately that's what a real tavern would do. Any place that's going to serve or have any sort of good or service is going to have at least some thought put into their marketing, right? So by thinking a little bit about how these people would make themselves stand out, especially if it's in a large city, right? Maybe there's a sign waiver outside, or there's some fantasy version of those wacky flailing arm things. Whatever it is that makes them stand out, and I think a real menu is one of those things because you're going to have things that are named after locals, things that are named after people that come in often, right? So having a real menu, even if it's just jotting down a couple of names, you can say, oh, we have biscuits and we have this and we have that, but we do have this one crazy turkey leg that takes 3 days to make, and we're really famous for that. And you know, you can then sort of riff off of that. But I think having something real, an actual menu, is a great way to just add a little more detail and a little more life into your taverns. Now, number 6 is kind of piggybacking off of that one, is a memorable drink. Every place, like I said, has its own menu. So should your tavern, and every place will probably have a house specialty. And I think that this is an additional way for you to also make the game more fun by adding things, drinks or food or whatever that has mechanical impact. So what I mean is, if you drink their famous brew, you go in and it gives you resistance to fire because it's made from dragon's breath, but it also makes you drunk, so you have disadvantage on acrobatics or what have you, right? Like, you can figure out the mechanics for yourself at your table and what works for you, but I think having a memorable drink is one of those things that you just kind of come to expect from a tavern, and if you don't have it, I think you're leaving money on the table. It's a great way to make your players feel like you're either very good at prepping or you're great at improv or what have you, right? I think that just come up with a list. Just have a list on hand. I would attach one to the back of my DM screen if I was doing in-person DMing. So attach it to the back of your DM screen, add it to your notes, whatever, wherever, and just have a list of names that you can just sort of look down, boom, that's the next one, cross it off, you write down what city they were visiting or what tavern they were visiting where that one was mentioned, and then you, next time they ask, you just go to the next one down the list, and you don't have to think about it, so just do it. Now, at number 7, tables. And what I mean here is, in parentheses, we can add that aren't empty, right? So a lot of the times you walk into a tavern and it's just sort of, yeah, there's people here, but there's no viscerality to it, right? You can't really, like, there's a few people here. You see that there's people going about their business, but like, what does that mean? So when I say that you should add tables that aren't empty, I mean, make the party have to ask people to move. Like, they're trying to get to the bar and the place is packed, so make it feel busy. Otherwise, why is the tavern there, right? If people aren't going there, then why is it there? And taverns are usually these places where people congregate. And I mean that in a fantasy setting, okay? Don't come at me versus like what the difference between an inn and a tavern, okay? I'm not here for it today, okay? So make the party have to ask people to move. Make them have to go around the edge, have people drunkenly come up to them, have tables, like if they try to find a table, there is no table available, so they have to go sit outside or stand outside, or they have to eat in the kitchen, and that's where they meet the cooks or whatever. Just find a way to make it feel like the tables are taken and that there's actual things happening, and you can do this a lot of different ways, but I think just some ones off the top of my head, by having games and people maybe fighting, you can have arguments, you can have people that come up to them and be loud. I think those are just a few things that you can do just off the bat to make it feel like this place has some livelihood. And then that kind of ties in with making good NPCs, right? And at number 8, live entertainment. And I mean something that's not just a bard, right? I'm talking things like comedians or knife jugglers. I did no proofreading for this script. I put knife huggler, so whatever that means. But knife jugglers, fire eaters, I think that's what they're called, right? Arm wrestling, card games, any of that stuff where there's things that they can do that isn't just listening to some music, right? You can have people put on entire theaters. Again, going back to the Elf Song Tavern, a ghost can just walk and waltz into the tavern. That would be something that is very unique. So just give it something that the players can remember or that your readers can remember. Having that sort of live entertainment gives it something that makes it once again feel tied to the world and like this place is doing something even when the players aren't walking through the front door. And then finally at number 9, I think that something that I see sometimes but not all the time is having a job board or a message wall. Not all of your quests that you give to your players need to come from a hooded figure in the corner that looks like Strider, right? You can have people posting for help at the front of the tavern. If people, especially in a small town, even in a city, if you have a place for people to congregate when they clock off for the day, whether that's out in the fields or from the factories or whatever, people are going to go to a place where they can relax, where they can meet other people like them, where they can talk to others, where they can fraternize, or they can mingle. And there are only a handful of places where you can do that, and taverns are one of those places. So obviously that would be one of the best places to put a job board where people can post for messages or missing persons or news, right? Things like that. It's a perfect spot for it. So why wouldn't a tavern have a job board or a message board? And then that gives you a great way to sort of pique the interest of players with potential quests. It's a great way to sort of keep a running tab of what quests they might be on. You can have like a physical cork board or something that you give to them that's like a prop for them, and every time you have a session you have new jobs on the cork board or whatever. I think that'd be really fun. Finding ways to keep them interested, but I think a message wall or a job board or something like that is just another great way to not only enhance the game and enhance the tavern, but it's also a way for you to have some help when you're trying to get quests or having them pull on threads and connect different threads to your stories and things like that. So, and now it's time for some quick shoutouts. ZXEV Studio says, why is Tobias blue? Did I miss something? Well, you might have missed a live stream we did. Oh my God, I don't even know how long that was ago. A few months ago, maybe a year ago. I don't even know. What is time? Time is weird up here. Let's just say a few things happened. There was a battle in the Feywild in a castle, and Tobias was in a weird cage that something happened, and now, you know, he got split across the spectrum. There we go. That was difficult to say. So that's why he's blue. I don't think that explained any of it. Marco Seldo says, Kitty at 416. Marco, great job, Marco. You get tucked into bed. You get a little hug, a little kiss on the forehead. Don't make it weird. And Cam Nami says, I saw Tibaeus in my dreams. I think you mean Tobias. And I think that's just a really interesting spelling of it, but I kind of like that it's Tibaeus, like it's like Deus, like Latin for God, like Tiberius is a god. Stare at him. Stare into the void. Now, if you were paying attention in today's video, leave a timestamp with where you saw Tobias in this video, because he was in it. And you put that in the comments, and you might get shouted out in the next one. You think after so many times of doing this, I would like figure that out, but I don't, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. That's it. Those are 9 things that I think you can add to your tavern. I'm sure that by just even adding 1 or 2 of those, it's going to make your tavern a little more magical, a little more memorable. So let me know in the comments down below if you think that I missed one. What do you do to make your taverns feel more unique? And that's it. That's all I've got for this week. So Forge On Adventures. Forge On Adventurers. I've had a long day. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, you probably need a few health potions. It's probably time to re-up on that, so since you're in town.